When the Houston police
When investigators reviewed the surveillance footage, they had no idea they were watching the calm movements of a man who had just carried out something unspeakable. The camera shows him entering Shelbey Thornburgh's apartment building without drawing any attention, and less than half an hour later, walking out with the same controlled, unhurried calm. Yet in that short span of time, he had committed a brutal murder, one that ended the life of 20-year-old Shelbey Thornburgh, a young woman with her whole future still ahead of her. This quiet moment on camera became the haunting heartbeat of a case more horrifying than anyone was prepared to confront. In the fall of 2015, 20-year-old Shelbey Thornburgh was working to rebuild her life. Originally from California, she had moved to Houston, Texas, with the hope of starting fresh. Friends and family described her as bright-spirited, deeply emotional, and determined to find stability. She was living in an apartment near the Galleria area, a place where she felt she could regain independence. Despite being far from home, Shelbey stayed closely connected with her older sister, Lorena, speaking with her almost every day. To those who knew her, Shelbey was trying hard to create a better future, even if the path was difficult at times. At 9:54 p.m. on November 4, 2015, the Houston Police Department received a distressing call. On the other end of the line, a devastated boyfriend reported that his partner was not responding to his messages. Worried, he returned home to look for her, and that was when he found her body. Officers quickly arrived at the apartment, and what they discovered left them speechless. In the living room, next to a small sofa, there was a makeshift bed, and on it lay the lifeless body of Shelbey Thornburgh. The scene was brutal. Shelbey had a 15-centimeter deep wound on her neck, a lethal cut that severed her left jugular vein, punctured her carotid artery, and extended to her C3 and C5 vertebrae. The amount of blood spilled made it clear that her death had been swift and extremely violent. But there was more. Shelbey was naked and face down with her clothes neatly folded beside the bed. Everything indicated that her murder had a sexual and sadistic undertone. Moreover, her body showed multiple defensive wounds on her hands, wrists, and shoulders, suggesting that she had fought desperately for her life. Shelbey's murder left an impossible void in the lives of her loved ones. But no one suffered more than her sister, Christina Thornburgh. At 4 a.m, Christina received the worst call of her life. She could barely process the words on the other end of the phone. In an act of despair, she immediately headed to Houston, hoping that it was all a mistake. But upon arriving at the apartment and seeing the police presence, she understood the terrible truth. Her younger sister had been brutally murdered. The police were now facing a complex case. Shelbey had an extensive social network with friends, acquaintances, and clients coming in and out of her life. Who could have committed such a terrible crime? Before revealing the identity of her killer, it is crucial to understand who Shelbey Thornburgh was and why someone would want her dead. Shelbey Thornburgh was born on August 18, 1995, in Wise County, Texas. She was the younger daughter of Robert and Leslie Thornburgh. Together with her older sister, Christina, they formed a family that, at least on the surface, appeared normal. But the reality was much darker. From a very young age, Shelbey and Christina grew up in a broken home marked by abandonment and suffering. Their father, a terrible man, spent much of his life in prison for unknown crimes. Their mother, initially loving and dedicated, ended up falling into the world of drugs, leaving her daughters in a vulnerable and chaotic situation. To avoid having social services separate them, they spent years on the run from Child Protective Services, living in constant uncertainty. But sooner or later, the system caught up with the family. Their mother lost custody of both girls, and a cruel cycle began. Shelbey and Christina were moved from one foster home to another, facing the harsh reality of neglect and abuse, as if their childhood wasn't traumatic enough already. When their father was released from prison, things only got worse. He not only mistreated them psychologically and physically, but according to reports, exploited them in unimaginable ways. It was a nightmare from which they could never fully escape, a suffering that scarred them forever. In the midst of such pain, Shelbey and Christina became more than just sisters. They were inseparable battle companions, supporting each other to survive. Christina, the older sister, took on a protective role, caring for Shelbey with unwavering love. The psychological impact of their tormented childhood was immense. Shelbey struggled with depression for years, and as a coping mechanism, she found comfort in food. By the time she reached adolescence, her weight had increased considerably, reaching over 300 pounds, 136 kilograms, at a height of only 1.55 meters. Yet Shelbey had a dream. She wanted to become a model. With absolute determination, she decided to transform her life completely. She immersed herself in a strict exercise routine, combining healthy diets and intense gym sessions. Day after day, she fought against her own body and her past. And in less than 2 years, she managed to lose over 100 pounds, 45 kilograms. Her effort was impressive, and the reward even greater. Shelbey not only changed physically, but also regained her confidence and self-esteem. The changes in her life did not stop there. With her renewed confidence, Shelbey decided to start over, far from her past, and move to Houston, a city where she hoped to fulfill her dreams. For this new chapter, she chose an apartment at the Conquistador apartment complex located in Sharpstown. At the time, the complex was considered relatively upscale, ideally located near the city center. To complete her transformation, Shelbey found what appeared to be the love of her life, Marcus Dwayne Johnson. Her new partner entered her life just when everything seemed to be improving. But what Shelbey did not know was that fate had one final terrifying surprise in store. A dark twist was about to unfold. And worst of all, someone had already been watching her. Shelbey was at a pivotal point in her life. She had achieved an impressive physical transformation and was ready to take the next step in becoming a model. However, there was one obstacle. The rapid weight loss had left her with excess skin, which made her feel insecure and, in her mind, kept her from her dreams. The solution seemed obvious: cosmetic surgery. But such a procedure was expensive, costing thousands of dollars. In her situation, getting that money quickly was not easy. What few knew was that Shelbey already had a strategy to obtain the funds. Marcus Dwayne Johnson, the man everyone believed to be her boyfriend, was not so in the conventional sense. They might have had something resembling a relationship at first, but over time, Marcus became her pimp. And the luxury apartment Shelbey was renting, she was not paying for it alone. Marcus helped with the expenses, but not without expecting something in return. Initially, her family had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. To them, Shelbey was simply living with her partner in Houston, beginning a new phase. However, her sister Christina soon noticed that something was amiss. And when she finally discovered the truth, she was horrified. Shelbey had become a high-end escort, serving clients in the comfort of her own apartment. Marcus handled the appointments and selected the clients, ensuring he received a portion of the money Shelbey earned. It was a dangerous world, but the money was very good. However, in 2014, her secret came to light in the worst possible way. Shelbey was arrested on charges related to prostitution. This was a devastating blow to her image and to her family. Even after that first arrest, she continued in the business. And later that same year, she was arrested a second time. By then, she could no longer hide her secret. Her family and friends eventually found out. Some judged her harshly. Others, like Christina, were simply afraid. Shelbey was involved in something very dangerous, a life that was never safe, especially now that she was welcoming strangers into her own home every night. Tragically, even if she had wanted to leave this world, it would not have been easy. This was not a lifelong career, but a temporary solution to get money quickly. Yet she was trapped. Threats, pressure, and fear of reprisals kept her in place. She couldn't simply quit from one day to the next. Even if she tried, she had nowhere to go and no means to support herself without that income. What Shelbey did not know was that this dangerous life was leading her directly to a deadly fate. On November 4th, 2015, Shelbey welcomed another client into her apartment. Hours later, her body was found brutally murdered.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
The crime scene indicated that everything had occurred shortly before, during, or just after the sexual encounter, suggesting that the killer was almost certainly a client. The first obvious suspect was Marcus. After all, he managed all her appointments. If someone had entered that night, Marcus must have known him. The authorities interrogated him relentlessly for hours. But to everyone's surprise, Marcus had no idea who the killer was. Moreover, he had an ironclad alibi. Every detail was carefully analyzed by investigators, and his alibi was confirmed, verified, and accepted without any doubt. So if it wasn't Marcus, who killed Shelbey? With suspicions about him ruled out, the detectives had to examine the case more closely. Something was slipping through their fingers, something hidden in the shadows. There was only one way to find out. Follow the clues the killer had left behind. Shelbey's murder was not an impulsive act, but a carefully planned crime. The attacker had stayed in the apartment long enough to ensure he left no fingerprints or bodily fluids. Only a small DNA sample was found at the scene, and when compared to local and national databases, there were no matches, no name, nothing. However, clues began to emerge. Among the most valuable was the surveillance footage. At 8:34 p.m., a man entered the lobby of the Conquistador. His appearance was peculiar. Fair complexion, a light sweater, shorts, sneakers, and sunglasses at night. He walked calmly toward the elevators, but instead of going up immediately, he did something unusual. He sat in a corner of the lobby as if waiting for something. 22 minutes later, the cameras captured him leaving the building, wearing the same clothes and showing the same composure. Yet there was one unsettling detail. He kept his left hand in his pocket as if hiding something. His body language spoke volumes. At first glance, he seemed like an ordinary man, but at exactly 8:57 p.m., he lowered his head in a fleeting yet significant gesture. Was it shame, guilt, or simply fear of having been seen? Moreover, he made no effort to make eye contact with anyone. He remained closed off, and those sunglasses in the middle of the night indicated he did not want to be recognized. With all this evidence, the police believed that catching the killer would be only a matter of time. Yet the most frustrating part was that time passed and no leads surfaced regarding the suspect. No one recognized him. Even though local and national news outlets broadcasted the images captured by the security cameras, he seemed like a man without a past, without an identity. A ghost lost in the crowd. Detectives examined Shelbey's phone and discovered that the same man captured on camera had been in contact with her all day. He had found her through Backpage, a website used to offer escort services. A headline news reporter managed to recover her ad, in which Shelbey described herself as a blonde beauty available for in-call and out-call services. At 8 p.m., her aunt had written asking if they could talk. Shelbey replied that she couldn't talk now because she was about to meet a client. She was working. At 8:06 p.m., the man messaged her, stating he would be there in 20 minutes. Shelbey responded with a simple acknowledgement at 8:07 p.m. Then at 8:33 p.m., the client told her he was there. 1 minute later, at 8:34 p.m., he entered the building. And 20 minutes later, Shelbey Thornburgh was dead. At 8:40 p.m., Shelbey sent a final message to Marcus, her pimp and supposed boyfriend. The message was simply the word good. According to Marcus, this was a code word indicating that she felt safe with the client. This message confirmed that at that moment, Shelbey did not suspect any danger. The killer had successfully deceived her. After that message, Marcus never heard from her again. When he realized that Shelbey wasn't responding, he went to her apartment, arriving shortly before 1 a.m., and found her lifeless. According to the autopsy, Shelbey was killed not long after sending that last text. 17 minutes later, her attacker left the apartment and exited the building. Yet one question remained. Who killed Shelbey? Shelbey Thornburgh was brutally murdered in her Houston, Texas apartment. According to the forensic report, she sustained a severe neck wound caused by a sharp object, possibly a large knife like a Bowie knife or a chef's knife. The wound was so severe that it severed her left jugular vein, punctured her carotid artery, and reached her C3 and C5 vertebrae. In addition, her body exhibited multiple defensive wounds on her hands, wrists, and shoulders, suggesting that she had fought desperately for her life. The crime scene was described as horrifying, with a large amount of blood spilled, indicating that her death was both rapid and extremely violent. Forensic experts were horrified when analyzing the scene, facing one of the most harrowing cases they had ever seen. With the killer's phone number in hand, the detectives believed it was only a matter of time before they caught him. However, he had planned everything carefully, purchasing a disposable phone with cash, ensuring no personal record was made, and destroying it immediately after the crime. In other words, he left virtually no trace. Worst of all, in the weeks leading up to the murder, this man had been contacting other sex workers in the area, all with a profile similar to Shelbey's, blonde and petite. This indicated that he did not kill her out of personal vendetta, but had chosen her as a victim. He was a predator lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. 9 years have now passed since the crime, 9 years with his face captured in high definition by surveillance cameras. And yet his identity remains unknown. Despite technological advances and the resources available, the killer's identity is still a mystery. As time goes by, memories of the crime's brutality may fade, but the anguish of the family and the community endures. 2 main theories have emerged regarding the case. One theory suggests that the killer could be a serial murderer, given the precision and methodical planning of the crime, implying he might have killed before and could continue killing. However, no similar cases have been identified in the area to date. The other theory suggests that around the time of Shelbey's murder, the Houston police were conducting undercover operations to dismantle prostitution networks, and that more than 20 pimps and sex workers were arrested a month after her death. Shelbey's sister even believes that Shelbey may have been cooperating with the police, which could have made her a target for a contract killing. Shelbey's family not only had to deal with the loss, but also with the police's incompetence. Christina, her sister, was forced to clean the crime scene. And while doing so, she discovered something the detectives had overlooked: a doormat at the entrance of the apartment with what appeared to be a blood stain. Christina took the mat home, and under better lighting, confirmed the presence of a suspicious red mark. When she called the police, they told her it was too late to submit it as evidence, an assertion that was completely false. If the killer had a wound on his hand, as the recording suggested, that blood could have belonged to him. Although the evidence might not have been admissible in court, it could have helped identify the suspect. This case is a clear example of how errors in an investigation can cost victims and their families dearly. The lack of adequate training within the police force resulted in the loss of a potentially key lead. Shelbey's murder remains unsolved as of January 2025, leaving an open wound in her family that may never fully heal. The image of her killer captured by the security camera undoubtedly replays in her loved ones' minds again and again. The hope remains that the right person will see those images and contact the authorities so that justice, long overdue for Shelbey's family, can finally be served. Her family, desperate for justice, has offered a $10,000 reward for any information leading to the capture of Shelbey Thornburgh's killer. This case stands as a reminder of the dangers faced by vulnerable individuals and the critical importance of thorough police work. Somewhere out there, a killer walks free, his face known to thousands, yet his identity remains a mystery. Every crime leaves a trace, and we're here to follow them. Subscribe for more real, haunting stories you won't forget.